Let me start by saying that I know how hard this all will be to believe. But now that things have taken a turn for the worse, I started looking for stories similar to mine and found weak and weird. I feel like I've shared this story with someone and your website seems like the right place. I made the mistake of letting the Blackeyed Kids inside, and now I'm worried that I might die because of it. I hope this will be a warning to everyone who is ever in the position to make the same mistake I did. I live just outside of a rural town in Vermont. It's a tight-knit community where everyone knows one another and people don't lock their doors at night. There has never been any need to. A little over a year ago, I woke up because I heard a loud banging on my front door at my front door. At the time, my husband lived in a small home on a dirt road off the rural town, at a rural route into town. In the middle of the snowstorm and the nearby hills get very slippery in the snow, so I thought that someone might have been in an accident and broken down. It's happened before. When I looked out the window, I could see that out motion spotlight was on. I could see that there were footprints in the snow that had come from our road and into our driveway, but there was no car anywhere. The snow was still covering the road, and no one had driven on it for at least a couple hours. Our front door was obscured from the window, but I could see that someone was standing there. I wasn't sure what to think, so I woke my husband up just to feel safer. While I was telling him what was going on, the banging on the door started again, and my husband went to answer it while I stood in the hallway. When he opened the door, there were two children standing in the snow looking toward the ground. There were a boy and a girl and could not have been more than 8 years old. They were dressed strangely and had odd haircuts. The girl's hair was very long and straight, and the boy had a dated haircut that looked almost like a bowl cut. They weren't dressed for winter, and my first thought was that they must have been Mennonite children. As far as I know, there was never a large community of Mennonites near us. Thinking back on it, I know that my normal reaction to seeing children in the snowstorm would have been to rush them aside and bottle them up with some blankets and hot cocoa. But that's not how this felt. The children were very unnerving. They would not make eye contact when my husband asked him if everything was okay and if they could come in. When my husband asked if everything was okay, they asked if they can come in. My husband looked at me like, what do I do? And I asked the kids where their parents were. They'll be here soon, is all they said. It was around 2 o'clock in the morning at this point, and so the only reasonable thought in my head was that there must have been an accident or these kids got lost. As much as my instincts told me not to bring them aside, I did anyway. I went into the kitchen to make them some hot cocoa while my husband took them into the living room. While I was fixing the kettle, I could hear my husband talking to the kids. He was asking them if they were okay, where they came from, and how far they walked, if their parents' car was broken down, like things like that. but they always answered, "Our parents will be here soon." They spoke in a sing-songy voice. They weren't afraid to be in a stranger's home at all. I started to notice that our cats, we had four, were all hiding except Pigeon, who was in the kitchen with me. Normally, our cats are very curious and friendly, and we have to be careful that they don't run out the door when we leave. This time, none of them even tried to see who was here, which I thought was very strange. All of the hair all on Pigeon's neck was standing up, and his tail was puffed up while he looked in the living room. When I bent down to pet him and see what was wrong, he hissed and started growling, and I backed up until he had hid himself under the kitchen island. I have never seen him do that before. When I walked back into the living room, the kids were sitting on the couch as still as can be, but my husband was holding his head in his hands. I asked him what was wrong, and he said that he just felt very dizzy all of a sudden, but that he was fine. I turned back to the children to give them their cocoa, but they looked at me, I gasped. But when they looked at me, I gasped. It took everything inside of me not to drop the mugs and run away. When they looked at me, their eyes were completely black. They had no whites, just giant black pupils. When they saw that I was scared, they stood up and asked if they can use the bathroom. I tried to be as composed as I could be and showed them down the hall. They went into the bathroom together, and I hurried back to my husband to ask him if he had seen their eyes. He had seen them too, and said that it looked like his brother's badly bruised eyes after a car accident. We were in the middle of talking about whose children they could be when my husband's nose started to bleed. He never had nosebleeds as long as I known him. I just knew inside myself that this had something to do with the kids in the bathroom, and I started crying while I went to get my husband some tissues. That's when the power went out. I heard my husband yell my name from the living room, and as I started to walk back through the hallway, I stopped dead in my tracks. The two children were standing at the end of the hallway. They weren't moving, and I have never been so scared in my whole life. They just stood there in the dark. After what felt like forever, the boy said, "Our parents are here." And they walked to the door and opened it and walked out, leaving it wide open. My husband jumped to go close it and almost fell over. We looked out the window and saw two men standing by a black car idling at the end of our driveway. The men looked like they were wearing black-colored suits and were very tall, at least 6 feet. When my husband waved at them, they just stared at us, got into the car, and drove off. Over the next few months, 3 of our cats went missing. We can only assume that they ran away somewhere and never came back. But the worst thing was coming home to find Pigeon in the puddle of blood on the living room floor. He looked like he had been vomiting blood. The vet told us that he had some kind of hemorrhage. After my husband's nosebleed became a regular occurrence, we went to see the doctor. He didn't know what to make of it other than dry nasal passages. But my husband was diagnosed with an aggressive skin cancer. When the doctor asked us if he used tanning beds, we both thought he was joking. But apparently this kind of melanoma is linked to overuse of indoor tanning. The doctors think he will recover. The doctors think that he will recover, but don't understand how it got so bad so quickly. My husband was never worked. My husband has never worked an outdoor job and spends relatively little time in the sun. Since we led the Blackeyed Kids inside our home, I've also suffered from regular dizzy spells and nosebleeds on a regular basis. I've had other issues which I won't mention here, but trust me when I say that I am suddenly in the worst condition of my life, and no one can do anything about it. I know all of this because I let the black-eyed children in my home. We've told everyone we could about the strange kids that showed up that night, but no one else saw them, and some laugh at how scared we were of the Mennonite kids, but we know what we saw. I wish my husband had never opened the door. Feel free to publish this as a warning to others about the Blackeyed Kids. My advice would be to lock your doors and call the police and wait for the morning. Don't make the same mistake that I did. As I said, it's the most frightening report of the Blackeyed Kids I've personally read, and the first one I'm aware of that covers that what happens to those unfortunate souls who let them in. Still, the story leaves us with more questions than answers. Who were the tall men that came to pick them up? Why were the kids so afraid of these children? Were they truly to blame for the nosebleeds and cancer? Two interesting things that stand out immediately are the obvious resemblance of the tall men in dark suits to the notorious Men in Black encounters. Second, the skin cancer diagnosis seems reminiscent of the radiation burns on moonburn syndrome, commonly suffered by UFO witnesses. Could our black-eyed children be part of an emerging trend in extraterrestrial contactee cases? Whatever the case, the warning remains the same. Don't let the black-eyed children inside.